Hey guys, tonight we're not delving into dusty tombs or deciphering ancient battle plans. Instead, we're soaring, metaphorically speaking, into the vast azure skies of medieval Persia, a land of ancient civilizations, stunning poetry, and an art form so refined, so deeply intertwined with its culture, that it was considered a pursuit fit for kings and shahs. Imagine a gloved hand, a keen-eyed raptor perched proudly upon it, the shimmer of desert heat, and the breathtaking moment a trained falcon stoops from an impossible height upon its prey. Tonight, we're exploring the gentle yet thrilling art of falconry in medieval Persia, a tradition that was far more than just a method of hunting. It was a symbol of status, a subject of art, a complex partnership between human and bird, and a window into the daily life and soul of a remarkable civilization. Now, if you were suddenly handed a fierce, untamed peregrine falcon and a set of tiny leather hoods and jesses, and told to go catch dinner in the Persian wilderness, you probably won't survive this particular endeavor with all your fingers, or your dignity, intact. This wasn't a casual hobby for the easily flustered. It was a dedicated, patient, and incredibly skilled art form. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And please do let me know in the comments where you're listening from and what time it is in your part of the world. It's always a pleasure to share these journeys into the past with you, wherever you may be. Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You find yourself in the sprawling, diverse landscapes of medieval Persia, a land that stretches from rugged mountain ranges and arid deserts to fertile river valleys and rolling grasslands. The period we're looking at is broad, perhaps from the rise of Islam and the early Islamic caliphates that absorbed the Sasanian Persian Empire in the 7th century, through the flourishing of Persian culture under dynasties like the Samanids, Ghaznavids, Seljuks, and Timurids, right up to the dawn of the Safavid era in the early 16th century. Across these centuries, amidst political upheavals, artistic flowerings, and profound intellectual developments, one pursuit remained a constant, highly esteemed feature of elite life falconry, or bazdar as it was known in Persian. This wasn't just a sport, it was an art, a science, and a profound expression of a particular kind of human-animal partnership. Imagine a royal hunting party setting out from a city like Isfahan, Nishapur, or Samarkand. The air is crisp, the light golden, nobles on fine Arabian horses, their attire rich with silk and embroidery, carry magnificent birds of prey upon their gloved fists. These are not just any birds. They are prized falcons, perhaps a swift peregrine or a powerful socker, or perhaps a goshawk or a sparrowhawk, each type suited for different quarry and terrain. Their tiny leather hoods, often intricately decorated, keep them calm and focused until the moment of the hunt. The scene is one of regal splendor, of controlled power, of an intimate connection with the wild, untamed spirit of these magnificent aerial predators. It's like a scene from an illuminated manuscript come to life, filled with color, movement, and a sense of ancient, noble tradition. You wouldn't just show up to one of these royal hunts with a rusty slingshot and a hopeful attitude. This was serious business with serious birds. Falconry in Persia was often referred to as a gentle art, which might seem surprising given that its ultimate purpose was the hunting and killing of prey. Gazelles, hares, cranes, bustards, ducks, and various other game birds that populated the Persian landscapes. But the gentleness lay in the profound patience, the deep understanding of the bird's nature, the meticulous training, and the respectful, almost symbiotic relationship that developed between the falconer bazdar and their raptor. This wasn't about brute force, it was about skill, trust, and a shared purpose. It was a dance between human intelligence and avian instinct, a partnership where both parties had to play their roles with precision and understanding. The best falconers were not just trainers, they were, in a sense, amateur ornithologists, keen observers of bird behavior, and often deeply devoted to the well-being of their prized hunting companions. "Yes, my little Cheyenne," a falconer might murmur to his hooded peregrine. "You may look like a feathered weapon of mass destruction right now, but I know you're just a sensitive soul who enjoys a good pre-hunt pep talk and the occasional high-quality quail snack. Don't worry, I remembered the quail snacks." A key historical fact is that falconry was deeply ingrained in Persian royal culture for centuries, if not millennia. Sasanian Shahs, before the Arab conquest, were avid falconers, and the tradition continued and flourished under subsequent Islamic rulers, who adopted and adapted many aspects of Persian courtly life. Possession of fine hunting birds was a significant status symbol, a mark of nobility and wealth. Falcons and hawks were exchanged as diplomatic gifts between rulers, their value sometimes exceeding that of precious jewels or silks. The royal mews, where the king's prized birds were housed and cared for, would have been an important part of the palace complex, staffed by skilled falconers, trainers, and attendants. The landscapes of Persia were ideally suited for falconry. The vast open plains and semi-desert regions offered excellent visibility for spotting quarry and for observing the breathtaking aerial pursuits of the trained raptors. The varied terrain, from mountains to marshes, supported a diverse range of game that could be hunted with different types of birds. A quirky and rather charming tidbit from Persian literature and art is the often romantic and poetic depiction of the falconer's relationship with their bird. The falcon is frequently portrayed not just as a tool for hunting, but as a noble companion, a symbol of courage, keen eyesight, and swift, decisive action. Poems would praise the beauty of a prized bird, its skill in the hunt, and the almost spiritual connection between the bird and its master. These weren't just pets, they were partners in a highly esteemed art form. Historians and scholars of Middle Eastern culture continue to explore the rich textual and artistic evidence for falconry in medieval Persia. Detailed treatises on the art of Bazdar were written, describing different types of raptors, methods of training, the treatment of avian diseases, and even the ethics of the hunt. These texts, alongside the vivid depictions of hunting scenes in Persian miniature paintings, offer invaluable insights into the techniques, the cultural significance, and the daily realities of this ancient pursuit. The precise extent to which falconry was practiced by social classes beyond the absolute elite in medieval Persia is still a subject of discussion. Some scholars might note, though it was undoubtedly most developed and most celebrated within royal and aristocratic circles, so, as you prepare to delve deeper into this world of feathered hunters and skilled Persian falconers, remember that you are entering a realm where nature and culture, sport and art, power and patience were beautifully, and often breathtakingly, intertwined. The cry of the falcon, as it stoops from the sky, is not just the sound of a predator. It is an echo of a tradition that shaped the daily lives, the art, and the very soul of medieval Persia. The gentle art of the Persian skies awaits. You're standing on the threshold of medieval Persia, the air alive with the imagined cries of hunting falcons and the distant thunder of hooves. We've glimpsed the reverence and artistry with which falconry, or Bazdar, was practiced in this land of ancient traditions and refined courtly life. But this noble pursuit, this intricate partnership between human and raptor, didn't just spring fully formed from the Persian soil. Its roots stretch far back into the mists of antiquity, deep into the arid landscapes and nomadic cultures of Central Asia and the Near East, long before it became a polished jewel of the Persian Shahs. To truly appreciate its significance in medieval Persia, you need to listen for those ancient echoes, to trace its long journey from the windswept steppes and desert fringes into the very heart of Persian civilization. The precise origins of falconry are, like many ancient practices, somewhat lost in the sands of time, a subject of ongoing scholarly fascination and debate. However, a key historical fact is that the earliest strong evidence for falconry points towards the vast steppes of Central Asia, perhaps among nomadic peoples like the Scythians or other Proto-Turkic or Proto-Mongolic groups. possibly as far back as 2000 BCE or even earlier. Imagine these hardy, horse-riding pastoralists living in close communion with a harsh environment, recognizing the predatory prowess of wild hawks and falcons, and conceiving the audacious idea of harnessing that power for their own hunting needs. For these early practitioners, falconry might have been less of a refined sport and more of a practical means of supplementing their diet, using trained birds to catch small game like hares, rodents, or game birds in landscapes where other forms of hunting might be less efficient. It was a pragmatic partnership, born of necessity and a deep, intuitive understanding of animal behavior. You can almost picture a grizzled steppe warrior, his face weathered by wind and sun, a fierce-looking hawk perched on his leather-clad arm, his keen eyes scanning the horizon for any sign of movement. He's not thinking about poetry or courtly etiquette. He's thinking about dinner. Right, sky terror. He might grunt to his bird. See that suspiciously plump-looking marmot over by that, well, by that other identical patch of endless grass? Go get him. And try not to take my ear off with your talons when you return this time. From these Central Asian heartlands, the art of falconry gradually began to diffuse outwards, carried by migrating peoples, through trade connections, and perhaps as a result of warfare and cultural exchange. It spread eastward into China, where it also became a highly developed and esteemed practice, and westward into the ancient civilizations of Mesopotamia and the Near East. There are depictions of figures with birds of prey on their fists in Assyrian reliefs dating back to the 8th century BCE, suggesting a familiarity with falconry in that region. By the time of the Achaemenid Persian Empire, circa 550-330 BCE, the first great Persian empire that stretched from Egypt to India, falconry was almost certainly known and practiced, at least among the nobility. The Achaemenids, with their vast territories and their appreciation for hunting as a royal pastime and a form of military training, would have been exposed to falconry traditions from their Central Asian satrapies and neighboring cultures, while direct textual evidence from the Achaemenid period, specifically detailing falconry practices, is somewhat sparse. Later Greek writers who described Persian customs, like Xenophon, often alluded to their love of the hunt, which likely included the use of trained raptors. The art truly seems to have become deeply embedded in Persian culture during the Sasanian Empire, 224-651 CE, the last major pre-Islamic Persian empire. Sasanian shahs were renowned for their lavish hunting expeditions, and falconry was a favored pursuit. Sasanian art, particularly silverware, textiles, and rock reliefs, sometimes depicts rulers or nobles with hunting birds, clear evidence of its established place in courtly life. It was during this period that falconry began to acquire the more refined, almost ritualized characteristics that would define it in later medieval Persia: specialized equipment, specific training techniques, and a growing body of lore and knowledge surrounding the different types of raptors and their capabilities. A quirky and rather interesting tidbit is the possible connection between early Persian falconry and Zoroastrianism, the ancient religion of Persia. Some Zoroastrian texts mention birds of prey, and the concept of purity and the fight between good and evil might have found symbolic expression in the noble falcon, representing light and swiftness battling its quarry. While this is speculative, it hints at the deeper cultural and spiritual resonances that falconry might have held. The exact date and route by which falconry first became a truly widespread and highly developed art form on the Iranian plateau, as distinct from more sporadic or imported practices, remains a topic of ongoing research and discussion among historians of sport and culture. However, by the time of the Arab conquest in the 7th century CE and the subsequent rise of Islamic dynasties in Persia, falconry was firmly established as a prestigious, noble art. The new Arab rulers and later the Turkic and Mongol conquerors who swept through Persia were often themselves avid falconers, readily adopting and further enriching the existing Persian traditions. In fact, the Islamic world as a whole, from Spain to India, developed a passion for falconry, and Persian expertise in the field was highly regarded. Arabic and Persian treatises on falconry became important texts, codifying and transmitting this specialized knowledge. So, as you imagine that medieval Persian falconer, with his beautifully crafted hood and his perfectly trained bird, remember that he stands at the end of a very long, very ancient tradition. The echoes of those first steppe hunters, the grandeur of Achaemenid and Sasanian royal hunts, the meticulous observations of generations of bird trainers, all have contributed to the gentle art he now practices. It is a legacy carried on the wind, a skill passed down through centuries, a deep connection between human and bird that has journeyed across vast landscapes and through the rise and fall of empires, finding a particularly refined and enduring home under the clear, bright skies of medieval Persia. The roots are deep indeed. You're now standing firmly in medieval Persia, the ancient echoes of falconry's origins still whispering on the desert wind. You understand that this isn't just a casual pastime, but a deeply ingrained cultural tradition, a gentle art with ancient roots. But the heart of this art, the very soul of the hunt, lies in the magnificent creatures themselves, the feathered hunters. The noble birds of prey, meticulously trained and deeply revered by their human partners. As you delve deeper into the world of Persian Bazdar, you begin to appreciate the sheer diversity of raptors employed, each with its unique characteristics, hunting styles, and suitability for different types of quarry and terrain. Not all birds of prey were created equal in the eyes of the Persian falconer. There was a distinct hierarchy, a connoisseurship that valued certain species and even certain individuals above all others. First and foremost among these prized hunters were the true falcons, members of the genus Falco. These were the sprinters of the sky, renowned for their incredible speed, their breathtaking aerial agility, and their characteristic hunting method, the stoop, a dramatic, high-speed dive from a great height to strike their prey in midair. Imagine a Persian nobleman, perhaps a shah or a powerful emir, out on the open plains, his eyes scanning the vast blue sky. Upon his gloved fist perches a magnificent peregrine falcon shahan in Persian, a name that itself signifies royalty or nobility, its dark eyes keen, its powerful shoulders hunched in readiness. When suitable quarry, perhaps a flock of fast-flying game birds like partridges, sand grouse, or ducks, is spotted, the falcon is unhooded and cast off. It waits on, circling high above the falconer, a tiny speck against the sun, until the moment is right. Then, with an almost unbelievable burst of speed, it folds its wings and plummets towards its target, a feathered thunderbolt striking with deadly precision. A key historical fact is that peregrine falcons are among the fastest animals on the planet, capable of reaching speeds of over 200 miles per hour, 320 km/h in a dive. Watching such a hunt would have been a truly exhilarating spectacle, a display of natural power and refined training. Did you see that? Ali Batib, one courtier, might exclaim to another. The Shah's prize Shahan just took that bustard out of a clear blue sky magnificent. My own bird mostly just chases butterflies and then demands extra quail for its efforts. Terribly embarrassing. Another highly valued falcon was the Sakar falcon charg, a larger, more powerful bird than the peregrine, often used for hunting larger game birds like cranes or herons, and sometimes even hares or small gazelles, though hunting large ground quarry with falcons was perhaps more characteristic of neighboring Central Asian traditions. The Sakar, with its broad wings and robust build, was known for its stamina and its ability to pursue prey over longer distances. The Barbary falcon, a smaller cousin of the peregrine found in arid regions, and the agile merlin dalaché, excellent for hunting smaller birds like larks, would also have been part of the Persian falconer's aerial arsenal. Each type of falcon had its specific strengths, and a wealthy nobleman might maintain a mews with several different species, each suited for a particular kind of hunt. Then there were the hawks, particularly the accipiters like the goshawk basha or jura and the sparrowhawk bashik. Unlike the falcons, which typically hunt in open country by stooping from above, hawks are masters of surprise and agility in more confined spaces. They have shorter, broader wings and longer tails, allowing them to maneuver swiftly through woodlands, scrub, or even among the tents of a hunting encampment. They typically hunt by a swift, low pursuit, dashing from a perch or from the falconer's fist to snatch their prey, often birds or small mammals, in a sudden, lightning-fast attack. A goshawk, powerful and aggressive, might be used to hunt pheasants, hares, or even larger waterfowl. The smaller, incredibly nimble sparrowhawk was a specialist in catching small birds. Training these short-winged hawks required different techniques and a different kind of patience than training falcons. They were perhaps less aristocratic in their hunting style than the high-flying falcons, but no less effective or valued for their specific skills. It's the difference between a sleek Formula One racing car, the Falcon, and a super agile rally car, the Hawk. Both impressive, but designed for different tracks and challenges. And what about eagles while eagle hunting Aquila crisados? The golden eagle, being a prime example, was and still is a major tradition in some parts of Central Asia, particularly among Kazakh and Kyrgyz cultures, for hunting larger prey like foxes, wolves, and even small deer. Its prominence in medieval Persian falconry for such large quarry is a bit more nuanced. A quirky, or perhaps clarifying, tidbit is that while eagles were certainly known, revered for their power, and may have been kept by some Persian rulers as symbols of imperial majesty, their widespread use for hunting large mammals in the Persian heartland seems less emphasized in many of the classic Persian falconry treatises than the use of falcons and hawks for avian and smaller ground game. The precise role and prevalence of large eagle hawking for big game within mainstream medieval Persian courtly falconry, as opposed to more specialized or regional practices influenced by Central Asian nomadic traditions, is still a subject of discussion among experts in the field. Eagles were certainly symbols of power, and their feathers prized, but the gentle art often celebrated in Persian poetry and painting tends to focus more on the grace and speed of falcons and the agility of hawks. The selection of a good hunting bird was, of course, crucial. Birds could be trapped as adult passengers or haggards, or taken from the nest as young birds' eyases. Each had its advantages and disadvantages in terms of training. Falconers would look for specific physical characteristics: bright eyes, strong talons, good feather condition, and also for signs of a bold, intelligent temperament. Some birds were naturally more gifted hunters than others, and a particularly skilled or successful falcon could become incredibly valuable. A treasured possession passed down through generations or given as a magnificent royal gift. The daily life of these feathered hunters, when not in the field, would revolve around the mews, their specialized housing, where they were carefully tended, fed, and trained, a topic we shall explore in more detail later. For now, picture them on their perches, perhaps hooded to keep them calm, their sleek feathers a testament to the meticulous care of their keepers. Each bird a perfectly honed instrument of the hunt, a living embodiment of speed, grace, and predatory power. Waiting for the moment their falconer would unhood them and cast them into the vast blue Persian skies, you're now surrounded by the imagined presence of these magnificent feathered hunters. The swift peregrines, the powerful sakers, the agile goshawks, each one a potential champion of the Persian skies. But these birds, even those bred in captivity, though capturing wild birds was often preferred for their innate hunting prowess, don't just arrive pre-programmed for partnership with a human. The journey from a wild, fiercely independent creature of the air to a relatively cooperative and devastatingly effective hunting companion on the falconer's fist is a long, delicate, and incredibly demanding process. You are about to witness the initial, crucial stages of this transformation, the art of manning the bird, a testament to patience, empathy, and an almost psychological duel between human will and avian instinct. This isn't just about teaching tricks, it's about forging a bond, however tenuous, with a creature born to soar free. First, of course, you need a bird. How did a medieval Persian falconer acquire their precious raptors? Some, particularly eyasses, young birds taken from the nest before they can fly, might be sourced from known nesting sites, a practice requiring considerable skill in climbing and a good understanding of bird breeding cycles. Taking eye asses allowed the falconer to imprint upon the bird from a very young age, but it also meant a longer period of raising and initial training. More commonly, perhaps adult wild birds were trapped. These were known as passengers if caught on their first migration, or haggards if fully mature and experienced wild hunters, often the most challenging but potentially the most rewarding to train. A key historical fact is that various ingenious trapping methods were employed, often described in detail in falconry treatises. These might include using live bait like pigeons tethered near cleverly disguised nets or snares, or using a decoy bird, perhaps a tethered owl, which raptors often dislike and will attack to lure the wild falcon or hawk into a trap. Imagine a Persian trapper, hidden patiently for hours, perhaps days in a remote, rocky outcrop, waiting for that perfect moment to spring his net and capture a prized saker falcon. It was a hunt before the hunt even began. Right, my feathered little decoy pigeon. The trapper might whisper, just look convincingly distressed and hawk attractingly plump for a little while longer. There's a nice bag of birdseed in it for you if we catch a champion today. And if not, well, try not to become the champion's lunch. Once the wild bird is captured, a moment of terror and confusion for the creature, its fierce eyes blazing, its talons ready. The true art of manning begins. This is the process of gradually accustoming the bird to human presence, to being handled, to perching calmly on the gloved fist, and to accepting the hood. It is a battle of wills, but one that must be won not through force or cruelty, but through infinite patience, consistency, and a deep understanding of the bird's psychology. The newly caught raptor, wild and terrified, would initially be incredibly resistant, baiting, attempting to fly off the fist in panic, biting and screaming. The falconer's first task is to overcome this fear and establish a fragile sense of trust. A crucial tool in this process is the hood. The leather hood, carefully fitted to the bird's head, covers its eyes, plunging it into a calming darkness. For a creature as visually oriented as a raptor, sight deprivation has a powerful subduing effect, reducing stress and preventing panic. The falconer would spend hours, sometimes days and nights on end, with the newly hooded bird on their gloved fist, a process known as waking. This involved constant, gentle handling, stroking the bird's breast and feet, speaking to it in soft, soothing tones, and gradually getting it used to the sounds, smells, and movements of the human world. Sleep deprivation was often part of the technique. For the falconer, that is, by staying awake with the bird, constantly handling it, the falconer aimed to break down its initial resistance and make it dependent on them for comfort and security. You can imagine a weary Persian nobleman, his eyes red-rimmed from a lack of sleep, still patiently murmuring to the hooded hawk on his arm, "There, there, my fierce little sky demon. The world isn't so scary. And look, I even remembered to put on my least threatening silk robe for you today. See, we can be friends. Eventually. After neither of us has slept for 3 days. Food is, of course, a key motivator. The bird, initially refusing to eat in its stressed state, would eventually be tempted with small, choice morsels of fresh meat, offered from the glove. The association of the falconer with food is fundamental to building that initial bond and dependence. The bird learns that the human fist is not a threat, but a source of sustenance. The process of manning is gradual and requires immense sensitivity to the bird's reactions. Pushing too hard, too fast, can undo days of progress. The falconer must learn to read the subtle cues of the bird's body language, the slight tensing of feathers, the dilation of pupils, the shift in posture, and adjust their approach accordingly. A quirky, and perhaps rather insightful tidbit from some falconry traditions is the belief that the falconer must almost become the bird, to think like it, to anticipate its fears and its needs. It's a deep, empathetic connection that goes far beyond simple animal training. The introduction to the Jess's short leather straps attached to the bird's legs, the leash, and the swivel which allows the leash to be attached to a perch without tangling would also be part of this early stage. Getting the bird accustomed to these essential pieces of falconry furniture, Historians still argue whether the more extreme methods of manning described in some texts, such as prolonged sleep deprivation for the bird itself, were common practice or represented a harsher end of the training spectrum, perhaps reserved for particularly difficult haggards. The emphasis in many Persian treatises, however, is often on patience, gentleness within the context of taming a wild predator, and building a relationship based on reward and positive association, rather than purely on fear or dominance. Once the bird is relatively calm on the fist, accepting the hood without too much fuss, and feeding confidently from the glove, the initial stage of manning is largely complete. It has gone from a wild, terrified creature to one that, at least provisionally, accepts the presence and handling of its human partner. It's a profound transformation, a testament to the falconer's dedication and skill. The bird is not yet a trained hunter, but it is now at hand, ready for the next, equally demanding stages of its education, learning to fly to the lure, to recognize quarry, and to return reliably to the falconer's call. The wild spirit is not entirely broken, nor should it be, for that is the source of its hunting prowess. But it has been gently, patiently, bent towards a remarkable, if sometimes uneasy, partnership with humankind. The journey from wild freedom to a place on the gloved fist is a delicate dance of domination and trust. Your prized raptor, perhaps a fierce young saker falcon or an agile goshawk, has now passed through the initial, often grueling, stages of manning. It accepts your gloved fist, tolerates the hood, and feeds confidently from your hand. The wild terror in its eyes has, you hope, been replaced by a grudging or perhaps even an emerging sense of partnership. But this is just the beginning. The bird is tame in a falconry sense, but it is not yet a trained hunter, not yet a reliable companion in the field. Now begins the equally demanding and even more artful process of perfecting this aerial predator, of honing its natural instincts and channeling its incredible abilities towards the specific quarry you desire. You are about to embark on a daily regimen of meticulous training, a masterclass in patience, observation, and interspecies communication, all designed to transform your bird into a skilled and responsive hunter. This isn't just obedience school with feathers. This is about forging a working partnership based on trust, reward, and a deep understanding of an ancient art. The first crucial step after manning is typically training the bird to the lure. The lure is a training device, often made of leather and feathers, sometimes shaped to resemble a bird or small animal, and to which a small piece of meat can be attached. A key historical fact from falconry treatises across cultures, including medieval Persia, is the central importance of lure flying in a raptor's education. Initially, with the bird still on its jesses, the short leather straps on its legs and a long light line or creance attached, you would show it the lure with a piece of meat, perhaps just a short distance away on the ground, and call it. When it hops or flies to the lure and takes the meat, it is rewarded. This process is repeated, gradually increasing the distance, until the bird readily and eagerly flies to the lure from considerable lengths. It's positive reinforcement 101, but with a creature that could easily decide to fly off and never come back if you get it wrong. Good bird. Bahram, you might coo, as your young falcon finally flies a full 10 feet to the lure. Another successful flight. Soon you'll be ready for, well, perhaps a slightly larger, more ambitious piece of string. And then, the world. Or at least that particularly plump partridge we saw near the oasis. Once the bird is proficient on the creance, the training progresses to free flight to the lure. The falconer will swing the lure in the air, often with a specific call or whistle, and the bird, released from a distance, will fly to it, binding to it in midair or upon the ground, and be rewarded with the tidbit of meat attached. This is not just about recall, it's about building fitness, teaching the bird to associate the falconer and the lure with food, and practicing the aerial maneuvers it will later use in the actual hunt. It's like flight school, but your student has razor-sharp talons and a very focused, meat-driven curriculum. A vital aspect of this training, and indeed of maintaining a hunting bird in peak condition, is weight management. A falcon or hawk that is too fat will be lazy and unresponsive, with little incentive to hunt or return to the falconer. A bird that is too thin will be weak and lack stamina. The falconer must, through careful daily feeding and observation, keep their bird at its optimal flying weight or hunting weight, a precise condition where it is keen, fit, and eager to pursue quarry, yet still responsive to the falconer's commands and the promise of reward. This requires immense skill and daily attention. Weighing the bird, adjusting its rations, which would consist of fresh, raw meat like quail, pigeon, or chicken, and observing its behavior. It's a delicate art, a constant fine-tuning. You seem a bit sluggish today. My little wind rider. The falconer might observe, carefully weighing his bird. Perhaps one less mouse-sized portion of rabbit for you tonight. We have a date with some rather swift desert hares tomorrow, and I need you sharp, not napping on the job. Once the bird is reliably flying to the lure, the next stage is entering it on the specific quarry it is intended to hunt. This is where the training becomes highly specialized. If you are training a peregrine falcon to hunt ducks, for example, you might initially use a tethered or bagged duck, a live duck released in a controlled manner to allow the young falcon to make an easy kill and build its confidence. This might seem a bit unsporting by modern sensibilities, but it was a practical way to teach the bird what its legitimate prey was and to reward its hunting instinct. Gradually, the falcon would be flown at wild quarry, often in the company of an experienced older bird from which it could learn. A quirky and rather interesting training tidbit is the use of kites or other artificial bird shapes, sometimes with meat attached, flown at height to encourage falcons to wait on circle high above the falconer in anticipation of game being flushed below. Different types of raptors required different training approaches. Falcons, with their high-flying stoops, needed to be encouraged to mount to a good pitch. Hawks, like the goshawk, which hunt more by direct pursuit and surprise, would be trained to fly swiftly from the fist or from a nearby tree, often in more wooded or enclosed terrain. Eagles, if used though less central to classic Persian falconry than in some other cultures, would require even more specialized handling due to their size and power. The exact balance between harnessing a raptor's innate predatory instincts and imposing learned behaviors through training is something that falconers and ethologists continue to explore and debate even today. It's clear that medieval Persian falconers, through centuries of accumulated empirical knowledge, developed an incredibly sophisticated understanding of bird psychology and behavior. Their training methods, while sometimes appearing harsh to modern eyes like the initial waking or sleep deprivation during manning, were ultimately aimed at creating a working partnership, a bond of trust, however unequal, between human and bird. The daily routine for a trained hunting bird would involve regular exercise flights, practice with the lure, and, during the hunting season, participation in the actual hunt. The falconer's life would revolve around the needs of their birds. Their feeding, their health, a topic we'll explore later, their training, and the constant patient reinforcement of that delicate bond. It was a demanding, all-consuming passion, an art that required not just skill, but a profound, almost intuitive connection with these magnificent aerial hunters. The sky was their classroom, the lure their textbook, and the promise of the hunt their ultimate examination. Your prized Persian falcon, or perhaps a keen-eyed hawk, is now well on its way to becoming a skilled aerial hunter. Thanks to those long, patient hours of manning and lure flying, you've established a bond, a fragile understanding between human and raptor. But this ancient art of Bazdar isn't just about the bird and your intuitive connection. It also relies on a fascinating array of specialized, often beautifully crafted equipment. This isn't your average pet store leash and collar aisle. The falconer's kit is a collection of highly specific tools, each designed with a deep understanding of the bird's needs and the practicalities of the hunt, and often reflecting the status and artistry of the falconer themselves. As you prepare for a day in the field, or even just a training session, You would meticulously check and arrange your gear, each piece a testament to centuries of accumulated falconry wisdom. First and foremost, there's the hood kula in Persian. Though terms varied, this small, often intricately decorated leather cap, designed to cover the bird's entire head and eyes, is one of the most iconic and essential pieces of falconry equipment. Its primary purpose, as we've touched upon, is to keep the bird calm and reduce stress. Raptors are highly visual creatures, and by depriving them of sight, the hood prevents them from being frightened or agitated by unfamiliar surroundings, other animals, or even the falconer themselves during the early stages of manning or when traveling. It allows the bird to remain serene on the fist or perch until it's time to hunt. A key historical fact is that hoods were often beautifully crafted, made from soft, supple leather, sometimes dyed in vibrant colors, embroidered with silk thread, or even adorned with tiny plumes or tassels, especially for the birds of a wealthy nobleman or a shah. They weren't just functional, they were a statement of the bird's value and the owner's prestige. Different styles of hoods also developed in various regions. The classic Dutch hood, the Indian hood, the Arab hood, each with subtle variations in design. Though the fundamental principle remained the same. Imagine a falconer carefully selecting just the right hood for his prized sucker. Shall we go with the understated gazelle leather hood with the turquoise bead today? My dear Barzin, or the more flamboyant crimson one with the silver pheasant feather? We are trying to impress the visiting emir. After all, let's not look like we just grabbed the first thing out of the hood drobe. Attached to the bird's legs are the jesses pay band, or dupay. These are short, soft leather straps, one on each leg, that allow the falconer to control the bird when it's on the fist or on its perch. The jesses usually have a slit or hole through which a leash can be passed. They are designed to be comfortable for the bird, yet strong enough to hold it securely. The leash band I pay, or a longer training line called a creance, as we've mentioned, is typically a long, thin strip of strong leather, used to tether the bird to the falconer's glove or to a perch when it's not flying. Essential for preventing an untrained or unentered, not yet hunting specific quarry bird from simply flying off and returning to the wild, never to be seen again. The leash is often attached to the jesses via a swivel fardashk or chargula. This small but crucial piece of metal or strong cordage allows the bird to turn and move on the perch or fist without the leash becoming hopelessly tangled. The precise evolution of certain falconry equipment, like the swivel, and its geographical origins are still topics of interest for historians of material culture and technology. As it represents a simple but vital innovation for managing a tethered bird. And then there's the glove, or gauntlet d'Espana. This is far more than just a fashion accessory. Made from thick, tough leather, often several layers on. It protects the falconer's hand and forearm from the bird's incredibly sharp talons. A large falcon or eagle, and when gripping the fist, can exert considerable pressure. And those talons are designed for dispatching prey, not for gentle hand-holding. The glove had to be both protective and flexible enough to allow the falconer to feel the bird's grip and movements. Like the hoods. The gloves of high-status falconers could also be quite ornate, perhaps made from fine deerskin, dyed, and embroidered. It was the original power glove, but for commanding a feathered killing machine rather than playing 8-bit video games. No falconer would venture out without a lure, vaparak, or dalv. As we saw in training, this is a device often made of leather and feathered to resemble a bird's wing or a small animal, used to recall the bird during free flight or to exercise it. A small piece of meat would be attached to the lure as a reward. The skillful swinging of the lure, accompanied by specific calls or whistles, was a key part of the falconer's art, ensuring their bird would return promptly. To help locate a bird that might have flown out of sight during a hunt, especially in wooded or hilly terrain. Small bells zongala were often attached to its legs or tail feathers. The faint, tinkling sound of these bells would guide the falconer to their bird, even if it was hidden in undergrowth with its quarry. These bells needed to be light enough not to impede the bird's flight, yet loud enough to be heard at a distance. They were often made of brass or silver, and their cheerful little jingle must have been a familiar sound on any Persian hunting expedition. Finally, the falconer would typically carry a hawking bag, tubra or kwasa ibaz, a leather pouch or satchel worn at the belt. This was essential for carrying small pieces of meat rewards for the bird, perhaps a spare hood or jesses, a knife for dispatching quarry or preparing meat, and any small game that the bird caught. It was the falconer's utility belt, holding all the necessary bits and pieces for a day in the field, a quirky and entirely practical tidbit. A good hawking bag also needed to be easy to clean, because carrying around bits of raw meat all day can get, well, a bit messy, especially in the warm Persian sun. You wouldn't want your hawking bag to develop its own unique and deeply unpleasant ecosystem. The craftsmanship of this equipment was often of a very high standard. Leatherworkers, metalworkers, and embroiderers would all contribute to creating these specialized items. The quality of a falconer's gear was not just about functionality, it was also a reflection of their status, their wealth, and their dedication to this noble art. Each piece, from the softest leather of the hood to the precisely balanced weight of the lure, was the result of centuries of experience and refinement, all designed to facilitate that unique, breathtaking partnership between human and bird, soaring together under the vast ancient skies of Persia. You're now fully equipped, at least in your imagination, with the beautifully crafted hoods, jesses, gloves, and lures of a medieval Persian falconer. Your prized bird, whether a swift Shasin peregrine or a tenacious Charg sakar, has been meticulously manned and trained. Its keen eyes now accustomed to your presence, its powerful instincts honed for the chase. The quiet days of preparation in the mews are over. Today, the trumpets sound metaphorically, or perhaps literally if it's a truly grand occasion. The horses are saddled, the hunting dogs are yelping with excitement, and a palpable thrill ripples through the air. You are about to join a royal hunting expedition, a shikar, venturing out into the vast plains or rolling foothills of Persia for a day in the field. A day of thrilling aerial pursuits, skilled horsemanship, and the ancient, noble art of falconry in its most spectacular form. This isn't just a casual birdwatching trip. This is a carefully orchestrated display of power, prestige, and primal partnership. The preparations for such a royal hunt would have begun long before dawn. Servants and attendants would be bustling, preparing provisions, checking tack for the horses, and ensuring the prized hunting birds were in peak condition, their feathers sleek, their eyes bright, their weight perfectly managed for optimal keenness. The falconers themselves, individuals of considerable skill and status within the court, would be meticulously inspecting their birds and their gear, a quiet intensity in their movements. A key historical fact, often depicted in Persian miniature paintings and described in texts like the Shahnameh Book of Kings, is that these royal hunts were often enormous affairs, involving not just the Shah or Emir and his immediate retinue of nobles and falconers, but also scores, sometimes hundreds, of beaters, dog handlers, and support staff. It was a mobile court, a small army, all dedicated to the pursuit of game and the display of royal magnificence. You wouldn't want to be the guy who forgot to pack the Shah's favorite jeweled hawking glove on a day like this. That would be a career-limiting move, to say the least. Has anyone seen my lucky gazelle spotting spectacles? A nobleman might fuss. And did someone remember to tell the head falconer that I specifically requested the soccer falcon that doesn't have a penchant for dive-bombing my turban? As the sun begins to climb, painting the Persian landscape in hues of gold and rose, the hunting party sets out. Imagine a vibrant procession, richly caparisoned horses, their riders adorned in fine silks and bearing their hooded raptors proudly on their gloved fists. Packs of sleek Saluki hunting hounds, straining at their leashes, eager for the chase, and the lines of beaters and attendants fanning out across the plains or into the valleys. The air would be filled with the jingle of harnesses, the calls of the huntsman, the occasional impatient cry of a hooded falcon, and a general sense of excited anticipation. The hunt itself would be a carefully managed operation, often led by a chief huntsman or the royal falconer. Scouts might ride ahead to locate quarry, Perhaps a herd of gazelles grazing on the plains, a flock of bustards or cranes in a marshy area, or partridges and sandgrouse hidden in the scrub. Once suitable game was spotted, the real art of the falconer would come into play. The specific type of raptor would be chosen based on the quarry and the terrain. For fast-flying game birds in open country, a falcon like a peregrine or sacker would be unhooded. Its keen eyes, far sharper than any human's, would instantly lock onto the target. Then, with a powerful thrust of its legs, it would be cast from the falconer's fist, launching into the sky like a feathered arrow. What follows is a breathtaking aerial drama. The falcon might wait on, circling high above, a tiny speck against the vast blue, positioning itself for the perfect stoop. The falconers and the hunting party below would watch, their hearts in their mouths, as the bird, with almost unbelievable speed and precision, folds its wings and plummets towards its prey. The stoop of a peregrine is one of nature's most awe-inspiring sights. A blur of speed and controlled power, often culminating in a mid-air strike that sends a puff of feathers into the sky. If the initial stoop is unsuccessful, a thrilling aerial chase might ensue, the falcon matching its speed and agility against the desperate, evasive maneuvers of its quarry. It's like watching a high-speed dogfight, but with far more elegant participants and a much tastier prize at the end, at least for the falcon. By Ahura Mazda's beard, a spectator might gasp. Did you see that turn? My own horse can't corner that sharply. And it has 4 legs and isn't trying to avoid becoming lunch for a very determined feathered missile. For hunting in more wooded or broken terrain. Or for quarry-like hares. A goshawk or sparrowhawk might be used. These birds, as we know, hunt by swift, direct pursuit, often from a lower altitude, using their agility to weave through obstacles and surprise their prey. The falconer would work closely with beaters or dogs to flush the game from cover, and then release the hawk at the opportune moment. The role of the falconer throughout the hunt is crucial. They are not passive observers. They must know their bird intimately, understand its signals, and use their voice, whistles, or the lure to guide it, encourage it, and, most importantly, to call it back after a successful or unsuccessful flight. When a bird makes a kill, the falconer must quickly ride to it, reward it with a small portion of the quarry the Tierney, and secure both the bird and the game. This requires excellent horsemanship, keen eyesight, and a deep, almost telepathic bond with their feathered partner. A quirky and rather practical tidbit is that sometimes, for particularly large or dangerous quarry like gazelles, if a saker was flown at them, or perhaps even wolves in some more northern Persian or Central Asian influenced hunts. Though this was less typical of classic Persian falconry than eagle hunting was further east, hunting dogs would be used in conjunction with the raptors. The dogs might flush the game or hold it at bay, allowing the falcon to make its strike, or vice versa. It was a coordinated, multi-species hunting team. The social dynamics of the royal hunt were also complex. It was an opportunity to display skill and courage both for the falconers and the nobles, to curry royal favor, to engage in friendly or sometimes not so friendly competition, and to affirm one's place within the courtly hierarchy. The success of a particular bird, or the daring of a particular rider, would be noted and discussed for days. The exact extent to which falconry contributed to the overall food supply for the royal court versus its primary role as an elite sport, a form of military training, and a vehicle for social and political display is still considered by historians of medieval Persia. It was likely a combination of all these elements, with the symbolic and social aspects often outweighing the purely utilitarian ones, especially for the grandest royal hunts. As the day draws to a close, the hunting party, weary but exhilarated, would return to their encampment or palace, their hawking bags filled with the day's quarry. The evening would likely culminate in a lavish feast, where the game caught by the prized falcons and hawks would be proudly cooked and shared, accompanied by wine, poetry, and much recounting of the day's most thrilling pursuits. A day in the field was more than just a hunt. It was a vibrant, multi-sensory experience. A celebration of skill, nature, and the enduring noble art of falconry played out under the vast, watchful skies of medieval Persia. The dust of the exhilarating royal hunt has settled. The quarry has been presented and perhaps already graces the feasting tables. And you find yourself now not in the wild, open plains, but within the opulent, intricate world of the medieval Persian court. Here, amidst the shimmering silks, the fragrant incense, the hushed whispers of courtiers, and the elaborate rituals of power, the art of falconry, or bazdar, takes on another, equally significant, dimension. It's not just a thrilling sport or a practical means of acquiring game. It is a profound symbol of status, a tool of diplomacy, a refined courtly pursuit, and a very visible expression of nobility and royal authority. The courtly wings of prized falcons and hawks are as much a part of the regalia of power as a jeweled crown or a golden scepter. Imagine yourself as an observer in the bustling court of a Persian Shah or a powerful regional emir during, say, the Seljuk or Timurid period. You would quickly notice that a passion for falconry and the conspicuous display of magnificent hunting birds is a defining characteristic of the ruling elite. To own a large and well-managed mews filled with highly trained peregrines, suckers, goshawks, and perhaps even rarer imported raptors was a clear statement of wealth, power, and refined taste. A key historical fact is that many Persian rulers, from ancient Sasanian shahs to later Islamic sultans and emirs, were themselves avid and accomplished falconers, often dedicating significant time and resources to the pursuit. Their personal skill in handling and hunting with these birds was a mark of their martial prowess and their connection to noble traditions. It wasn't just a hobby, it was part of the expected skill set of a true aristocrat, like being a good horseman or proficient with a bow. You wouldn't expect the Shah to be personally mucking out the mews. Of course, that's what highly paid royal falconers were for, but he'd certainly want to be seen expertly casting off his prize cheyenne during a grand hunt. Observe, ambassadors from the distant land of Frankistan. He might declare as his falcon plummets from the sky. How even the swiftest bird in creation obeys the will of a true king now. About those rather interesting Frankish crossbows you mentioned, the birds themselves were often treated with almost royal reverence. Prized falcons would have their own dedicated attendants. Their hoods and jesses might be crafted from the finest tooled leather, adorned with gold or silver threads, and even embellished with small gemstones. They were not mere animals, they were valuable assets, symbols of prestige, and sometimes cherished companions. The loss of a particularly skilled or favored hunting bird could be a cause for genuine mourning in the court. Falconry also played a crucial role in diplomacy and statecraft. The gift of a magnificent, well-trained hunting falcon was one of the highest compliments one ruler could pay to another, a symbol of respect, friendship, and alliance. These diplomatic birds would travel in style, often accompanied by their own skilled falconers and attendants, to the courts of neighboring emirs, distant caliphs, or even rival powers with whom a truce was being sought. The quality of the bird offered, its species, its training, and its plumage would all be carefully scrutinized as an indicator of the giver's sincerity and the importance they placed on the relationship. It's like international gift exchange today, but instead of a slightly awkward fruit basket or a mass-produced commemorative plaque, you're giving a living, breathing, highly trained weapon of aerial destruction with an impeccable pedigree. "Your Majesty," an envoy might announce, bowing low. "My master, the Sultan of Khwarazm, sends this humble token of his esteem a pure white gyrfalcon from the northern steppes, trained to hunt cranes by the light of the full moon. He hopes it will encourage further friendly discussions regarding that minor border dispute we were having." Within the court itself, skill in falconry and access to the royal hunts could be a significant avenue for ambitious nobles or courtiers to gain favor and demonstrate their loyalty. To be invited to join the Shah's private hunting party was a mark of distinction. To present the ruler with a particularly fine bird you had trained, or to distinguish yourself with your own prowess in the field, could lead to advancement and reward. The language of falconry, its specialized terms, its lore, would have been a common currency among the elite, a shared passion that helped to bind them together. A quirky and rather delightful aspect of falconry's courtly status is its frequent depiction in Persian art, particularly in miniature paintings from illuminated manuscripts. These exquisite artworks often portray shahs and princes on horseback, a hooded falcon proudly perched on their gloved fist, setting out for the hunt or returning with game. The birds are rendered with incredible detail and affection, their fierce beauty clearly a subject of admiration. These paintings weren't just pretty pictures, they were visual affirmations of royal power, noble virtue, and the refined pleasures of courtly life. The falcon became a recurring motif, a shorthand symbol for aristocracy and high status. The hierarchy within the royal muse itself would also reflect the importance of falconry. The chief royal falconer, Amir-i-Shikar, or a similar title, would be a high-ranking and trusted official, often a nobleman himself, with considerable influence at court. He would be responsible for overseeing the entire royal collection of hunting birds, their training, their health, and the organization of the grand hunts. His expertise was invaluable, and his position one of considerable prestige. The precise economic value placed on a top-tier hunting falcon in medieval Persia, relative to other luxury goods like Arabian horses or precious gemstones, is difficult to quantify with modern certainty. But all indications suggest it was undoubtedly immense, often representing a significant investment and a major display of wealth. The cost of acquiring a rare bird, training it to perfection, and maintaining it in peak condition was substantial. You've witnessed the grandeur of the royal Persian hunt, felt the weight of the falconer's glove, and understood the deep social and political significance of falconry within the medieval Persian court. This gentle art was not merely a pastime for the elite, it was a passion, a symbol, and a profound expression of cultural values. It's no surprise, then, that this captivating pursuit, with its thrilling aerial action, its noble birds, and its deep connection between human and animal, found a powerful and enduring echo in the rich artistic traditions of Persia. As you now turn your gaze from the dusty hunting fields to the hushed libraries and ornate palace walls, you discover that the falcon's image and the spirit of Bazdar is lovingly, exquisitely, and ubiquitously immortalized in Persian poetry, miniature painting, and other art forms, each representation further weaving this noble practice into the very soul of Persian culture. First, let us listen to the poets. Persian literature, particularly from the medieval period onwards, is renowned for its lyrical beauty, its profound philosophical insights, and its rich tapestry of imagery. And within this literary landscape, the falcon, the hawk, and the hunt itself frequently appear as potent symbols and vivid narrative elements. A key historical fact is that many of the great Persian poets, from Ferdowsi in his epic Shahnameh Book of Kings to later mystical and lyrical poets like Rumi, Hafez, and Omar Khayyam, though his direct falconry references might be more allegorical, incorporated imagery of hunting birds and the chase into their verses. Sometimes these depictions were literal, celebrating the skill of a royal hunter or the beauty of a prized falcon. Other times, Gidya, the bird of prey, became a powerful metaphor. The swift, keen-eyed falcon stooping upon its quarry could symbolize decisive action, spiritual aspiration, the focused pursuit of truth or love, or even the human soul striving towards the divine. The tamed hawk, loyal to its master, might represent devotion or a disciplined spirit. The wildness of the untamed bird could be a metaphor for untamed passion or freedom. It's like the original spirit animal concept, but with much more elegant Persian verse and a higher chance of the animal actually being able to catch your dinner. My love, a poet might sigh in a ghazal. Your glance is like the swift shan, stooping upon my unsuspecting heart, and my heart, alas, is but a trembling partridge. Though, hopefully, a partridge you intend to cherish, not just, eat. The Shahnameh, Ferdowsi's monumental epic recounting the mythical and historical past of Persia, completed around 1010 CE, is replete with scenes of royal hunts, including those involving falcons and hawks. These scenes are not just incidental, They serve to illustrate the valor, the skill, and the kingly virtues of the heroes and shahs depicted. A successful hunt, particularly one involving a prized bird, was a demonstration of a ruler's mastery over the natural world and his fitness to lead. In mystical Sufi poetry, the falcon often takes on even deeper symbolic meanings. It can represent the human soul yearning for reunion with the divine beloved, soaring beyond the confines of the material world. The falconer, in this context, might be seen as a spiritual guide, training the soul bird to return to its true divine origin. The imagery is rich, complex, and deeply resonant. Now, let your eyes wander to the vibrant, jewel-like world of Persian miniature painting, which reached extraordinary heights of artistry from the 14th century onwards. Particularly under patrons like the Timurids and later the Safavids. Here, scenes of falconry are a recurring and beloved theme. Imagine unfolding a page from an illuminated manuscript of the Shahnameh, or a collection of lyrical poetry. You might see an exquisitely detailed depiction of a royal hunting party. The Shah himself on a magnificent stallion, a tiny, perfectly rendered falcon perched on his gloved fist. The landscape is often idealized, a paradise of flowering trees and mythical rock formations. The hunters are clad in rich silks, their horses elegantly caparisoned. The falcons themselves are painted with incredible precision. Their fierce eyes, their sleek plumage, their poised readiness captured by the artist's delicate brush. These weren't just illustrations. They were windows into a world of aristocratic leisure, of refined pleasure, and of the deep aesthetic appreciation for these noble birds. The precise iconographic programs of these hunting scenes, and the extent to which they represent literal events versus idealized portrayals of royal virtue and courtly life, continue to be analyzed and debated by art historians. A quirky, and rather charming, detail in some of these miniature paintings is the almost human-like expressions sometimes given to the hunting birds, or the way they seem to interact with their falconers, suggesting that deep, almost personal bond we've discussed. You might see a falcon gazing intently at its master, or a hawk returning a look of mutual understanding. It's a visual representation of that unique interspecies partnership. Sometimes, the paintings also depict the less glamorous, but equally important, aspects of falconry: the training of the birds, the care in the mews, the preparation of the equipment. Beyond poetry and painting, falconry motifs also found their way into other Persian art forms. You might see stylized depictions of hawks or falcons on ceramics, metalwork, textiles, and architectural embellishments. The bird of prey, with its connotations of power, speed, nobility, and keen vision, was a potent and versatile symbol that resonated deeply within Persian culture. It wasn't just a hunting tool, it was an emblem of a whole way of life, an aristocratic ideal. Yes, I'd like this rather fine silk carpet for my receiving room, a wealthy merchant might say. But does it come with a few more tastefully embroidered attacking peregrines in the border? It really ties the room together and subtly hints at my entirely fictional prowess as a master falconer. The very treatises on falconry, the basnamas that codified the art and science of training and caring for these birds, were often themselves works of art, meticulously calligraphed and sometimes beautifully illustrated. These texts were not just practical manuals. They were part of a broader literary and scholarly tradition that celebrated falconry as a noble and worthy pursuit. So, as you immerse yourself in the artistic expressions of medieval Persia, you find the image of the falconer and their bird woven deeply into its cultural DNA. The poets sang of their swiftness and their loyalty. The painters captured their beauty and their thrilling prowess in the hunt, and artisans incorporated their noble forms into a myriad of decorative arts. Art's embrace ensured that the gentle art of falconry was not just a pastime for the elite, but an enduring symbol of Persian identity, a timeless celebration of the wild beauty of nature and the remarkable bond that could be forged between human and bird. You've seen the medieval Persian falconer's world unfold, from the meticulous training of their prized raptors to the grand spectacle of the royal hunt. and the celebration of this noble art in poetry and exquisite miniature paintings. But beyond the practicalities of the chase and the outward displays of status, there lies a deeper, more intimate dimension to falconry, the profound, almost mystical, bond that could develop between the falconer and their bird. This wasn't just a master-servant relationship or a hunter using a living tool. At its best, it was a unique interspecies partnership built on countless hours of shared experience, mutual respect, however asymmetrical, and a level of understanding that often seemed to transcend mere words. You are now invited to explore this subtle, powerful connection, the invisible silken thread that bound the human heart to the wild spirit of the aerial hunter. Imagine the daily life of a dedicated Persian falconer. Much of their time would be spent in close proximity to their birds. The process of manning a newly captured raptor, as we've seen, involved days, even weeks, of constant, patient handling, often with the falconer depriving themselves of sleep to stay with the bird, gently stroking its feathers, speaking to it in soft tones and gradually accustoming it to their presence. This intense, focused interaction was the foundation upon which the bond was built. The bird learned that this human, initially a source of terror, was now a provider of food, a source of relative security, and a calm, consistent presence. The falconer, in turn, was learning the individual temperament of their bird, its fears, its preferences, its subtle signals of agitation or contentment. It's like the ultimate trust-building exercise. But your partner has razor-sharp talons and could easily decide to redecorate your face if you make a wrong move. Yes, my fierce little sky jewel, the falconer might murmur to a still nervous haggard on his fist. I know the world is big and scary, and that leather hood is probably not your idea of high fashion. But trust me, the quail snacks are excellent. And together, we shall perform aerial ballets that will make the poets weep with joy. Or at least, we'll catch a few decent partridges for the Shah's dinner. This bond was further solidified during the long hours of training, flying the bird to the lure, teaching it to wait on high above, entering it on specific quarry. Each successful step was a shared achievement, reinforcing the bird's reliance on the falconer and the falconer's understanding of the bird's capabilities. The falconer wasn't just issuing commands, they were engaging in a silent dialogue with their raptor, reading its intent from the angle of its wings, the focus of its gaze, the subtle tension in its body. And the bird, in turn, was learning to respond to the falconer's calls, whistles, and the movements of the lure, associating them with the thrill of the chase and the reward of food. A key historical fact, often emphasized in historical falconry treatises from Persia and elsewhere, is the importance of the falconer's calm, patient, and consistent demeanor. A good falconer could not be hot-tempered or erratic. They needed an almost zen-like composure, an ability to project confidence and reassurance to a creature that was, at its core, still a wild predator. The bird had to learn that the falconer's fist was the safest, most rewarding place to be, the point to which it would always return after its flight. In the field, during the actual hunt. This partnership reached its apotheosis. The falconer and the bird worked as a team. The falconer would spot the quarry, assess the conditions, and choose the right moment to unhood and cast off their bird. They would then follow the flight, often at a gallop on horseback, their eyes fixed on the aerial drama unfolding above. And when the bird made its kill, the falconer would be there quickly to assist, to reward the bird, and to secure the game. It was a shared triumph, a moment of intense, primal connection. You can imagine the surge of pride and affection a falconer would feel as their perfectly trained bird returned to the glove, its quarry secured, its fierce eyes perhaps even holding a flicker of, well, if not exactly gratitude, then at least a well-fed, predatory satisfaction. Well done, my swift companion. The falconer might exclaim, that was a stoop worthy of Simurgh himself. You've earned an extra choice tidbit tonight, and perhaps even a new set of overly ornate jesses if the Shah's feeling particularly generous with the treasury. This deep bond often led to a profound sense of grief if a prized bird was lost, perhaps to illness, an accident during the hunt, or simply old age. Persian poetry sometimes contains laments for lost falcons, expressing a sorrow that seems to go far beyond the loss of a mere hunting tool. These birds were individuals, each with its own personality and capabilities, and the falconer had invested years of their life in its training and care. A quirky and rather touching tidbit from falconry lore across various cultures is the idea that some particularly devoted birds might even seem to mourn the death of their falconers, refusing to hunt for a new master or pining away in their absence. While likely an anthropomorphic interpretation, it speaks to the perceived depth of the connection, the extent to which ancient and medieval falconers truly anthropomorphized their birds, attributing human-like emotions, complex thought processes, or a sense of loyalty beyond conditioned responses is a fascinating question for cultural historians and ethologists. What is undeniable is that a successful falconer needed an extraordinary degree of empathy and intuitive understanding for their avian partner. They had to learn to think like a bird, to see the world through its keen, predatory eyes, in order to effectively train and hunt with it. This unique partnership, this bridge between human and wild, was a source of immense pride and satisfaction for the medieval Persian falconer. It was a testament to their skill, their patience, and their ability to connect with a creature of such fierce, untamed beauty. The bird on their fist was not just a status symbol, it was an extension of their own senses, a partner in a thrilling and ancient art, a living embodiment of a bond forged not through chains or cages, but through countless hours of shared experience, mutual reliance, and a quiet, profound understanding that transcended the boundaries of species. The falconer's heart, in a very real sense, soared with their bird. You felt the depth of that almost mystical bond between the medieval Persian falconer and their magnificent bird. A partnership forged through patience, understanding, and countless hours of shared experience in the mews and in the field. This profound connection, this gentle art, was not just a matter of oral tradition and hands-on practice passed down from master to apprentice. As Persian culture reached new heights of literary and scholarly achievement, this specialized knowledge also found its way onto the written page. Codified in meticulously crafted treatises and manuals known as baznamaz, or books of the falcon, a hawk. You are now invited to imagine yourself in a quiet library or a scholar's study, carefully unrolling one of these precious manuscripts, a repository of written wisdom that sought to preserve, explain, and elevate the ancient art of Bezdar. These baznamaz were far more than simple how-to guides. They were often comprehensive works, reflecting a deep, almost scientific observation of birds of prey, combined with practical advice, ethical considerations, and sometimes even poetic or philosophical reflections on the nature of the hunt and the falconer-bird relationship. A key historical fact is that a number of these Persian falconry treatises have survived, some dating back to the early Islamic period and continuing to be produced and copied through the medieval era and beyond. They represent a rich, continuous tradition of specialized knowledge, often written by experienced falconers themselves, or commissioned by noble patrons who were passionate devotees of the art. It's like discovering that your great-great-great-grandfather, who was apparently really into, say, competitive cheese rolling, not only excelled at it, but also wrote a surprisingly detailed and philosophical treatise on the zen of the double Gloucester downhill dash. Impressive stuff. What kind of information would you find within the carefully inked pages of a medieval Persian baznama? Typically, they would begin by describing the different species of raptors used in falconry, the various types of falcons shahan, char, dalashe, hawks, basha, jura, bashik, and sometimes even eagles. They would detail their physical characteristics, their natural habitats, their hunting styles in the wild, and their suitability for different types of quarry and terrain. There might be advice on how to identify a superior bird, looking for specific signs of strength, intelligence, and good temperament. When selecting a young peregrine, one such treatise might gravely instruct: ensure its eyes are like dark, polished obsidian, its talons like sharpened daggers of tempered steel, and its general demeanor one of haughty disdain for all lesser creatures, especially pigeons. A falcon with an undue fondness for pigeons is, frankly, a disgrace to its noble lineage. Oh. A significant portion of any Basnama would be dedicated to the intricate processes of capturing, manning, and training these birds. They would describe various trapping techniques, the delicate art of accustoming a wild bird to the hood and the fist, the waking process we've discussed, and the step-by-step methods for training it to the lure and then entering it on specific game. These sections would be filled with practical advice, often based on generations of empirical knowledge: how to manage the bird's diet to ensure keenness, how to deal with common training problems like carrying when a bird tries to fly off with its kill instead of waiting for the falconer, or how to instill a reliable recall. The healthcare of these prized hunting birds was also a major concern, and the Basnamas often contained extensive sections on avian medicine. They would describe common diseases and injuries that afflicted raptors: broken feathers, foot infections, bumblefoot, respiratory ailments, digestive problems, and offer a range of traditional remedies. These remedies were often based on herbal preparations, dietary adjustments, and sometimes more esoteric practices. A quirky and rather fascinating tidbit from some of these ancient veterinary sections might include recipes for elaborate medicinal powders containing ingredients like powdered gemstones or rare herbs, alongside more practical advice on bone setting or wound care. The health and well-being of a prize falcon was a serious investment, and no effort was spared to keep it in peak condition. For a falcon suffering from a melancholy of the crop, the text might advise: administer a decoction of 7-year-old rose petals, 3 hairs from a lion's mane, ethically sourced, of course, and the whispered incantation of a particularly cheerful gazelle. If that fails, try fewer slightly spoiled quail tidbits. Beyond the practicalities, many Basnamas also touched upon the ethics of falconry. The ideal qualities of a good falconer: patience, gentleness, keen observation, devotion to their birds, and sometimes even the deeper, almost spiritual significance of the human-raptor partnership. They might include anecdotes, poems, or philosophical reflections that elevated falconry from a mere sport to a noble art, a path to understanding the natural world and one's own character. These treatises were often beautifully produced manuscripts, especially those created for royal or noble patrons. They would be meticulously calligraphed in elegant Persian script, and sometimes adorned with exquisite miniature paintings depicting different types of raptors, hunting scenes, or falconry equipment. They were not just repositories of information, they were also works of art in themselves, reflecting the high cultural status of falconry. The extent to which these written treatises reflected actual widespread practice among all falconers versus an idealized or courtly standard of falconry is still carefully considered by researchers. While a highly literate royal falconer might have access to and consult such a manuscript, a more humble and provincial falconer might have learned their craft primarily through oral tradition and direct apprenticeship, their knowledge no less profound for being unwritten. However, the very existence of these detailed written manuals helped to codify, preserve, and transmit the sophisticated knowledge base of Persian falconry across generations and even across cultures. As some of these texts were later translated into other languages, so, as you imagine carefully unrolling one of these ancient Basnamas, the papery, or later paper scroll, whispering with the accumulated wisdom of centuries, you are touching a vital part of Persia's intellectual and cultural heritage. These books of the bird were a testament to a deep love and respect for these magnificent aerial hunters, and a desire to understand and perfect the gentle yet thrilling art of partnering with them in the vast, ancient skies. The written word here served not just to record history, but to guide the living practice of a noble tradition. You've spent considerable time now in the rarefied air of medieval Persian courts, imagining shahs and emirs with magnificent falcons on their gloved fists, their hunts grand spectacles of power and prestige, their knowledge codified in beautifully calligraphed baznamaz. It's easy to get the impression that falconry, this gentle art, was an exclusively aristocratic pursuit, a pastime reserved for kings, princes, and the highest echelons of nobility, far beyond the reach or even the aspiration of the common person. And indeed, the most elaborate, expensive, and highly documented forms of falconry certainly were the preserve of the elite. But as you delve deeper into the social fabric of medieval Persia, you begin to wonder, did the allure of these feathered hunters, the thrill of the aerial chase, truly remain confined to the palace walls and the vast hunting estates of the great lords, or did falconry, perhaps in simpler, more utilitarian forms, find a wider social reach? Its echoes felt even among less exalted members of society. The image of falconry that dominates Persian art and literature is undeniably a courtly one. The miniature paintings depict sumptuously dressed nobles on fine steeds, their prized birds adorned with jeweled hoods. The poetry often celebrates the royal hunt, using the falcon as a metaphor for kingly virtues. The most detailed treatises on Bazdar were often commissioned by or dedicated to rulers and high-ranking officials. This elite focus is understandable. These were the people who had the leisure, the resources, and the desire to patronize the artists and writers who recorded such pursuits. It's like how today most magazines about yachting tend to focus on billionaires and their super yachts, not so much on your Uncle Mahmoud's slightly leaky but beloved inflatable dinghy. The glamour factor is just different. However, to assume that falconry was solely an elite activity might be an oversimplification. While owning a team of perfectly trained soccer falcons and maintaining a vast royal muse was certainly beyond the means of a humble farmer or a city artisan, the basic skills of trapping and training less prestigious, but still effective. Hunting birds might have been more widespread than the high art sources immediately suggest. A key historical fact is that birds of prey were, after all, part of the natural environment across Persia. Smaller hawks, like the sparrowhawk bashik or the kestrel, are relatively common and could be trapped with simpler methods. These birds, while not capable of bringing down a gazelle or a crane like a powerful saker, were perfectly adept at catching small birds like sparrows, larks, or quail and rodents, which could provide a welcome supplement to the diet of a less wealthy family, or perhaps even a small source of income if the quarry could be sold in local markets. Right, my little bashik, a village elder might say to his grandson, to whom he's teaching the rudiments of the art. She may not be a Shah's prize Shahan, but she's a devil for catching those sparrows that keep eating our millet crop. And a sparrow in the pot is better than a peacock in the Shah's inaccessible garden. Eh? The economic barriers were certainly significant. A truly valuable hunting falcon could be worth a fortune, a diplomatic gift between kings. The specialized equipment, the gloves, hoods, jesses, lures, even if not made of the finest materials, still represented an investment, and the time required for manning, training, and daily care of a hunting bird was considerable, a luxury that a working peasant or a busy urban craftsman might not easily afford. However, in a society where hunting skills were generally valued, and where supplementing the family larder was always welcome, it's plausible that some individuals outside the immediate courtly circle might have engaged in simpler forms of hawking. Perhaps a village headman, a prosperous merchant with a bit of land, or even a particularly skilled and adventurous farmer might have kept a hawk or two for practical hunting, or for the sheer pleasure and prestige of the sport. However modest their setup, a quirky, and perhaps telling tidbit might be found in regional folklore or proverbs that hint at a broader familiarity with birds of prey and hunting practices, even if not full-blown, elite-style falconry. Stories of clever peasants outwitting nobles in some way, perhaps even involving a humble but surprisingly effective hunting bird, or local beliefs about the auspicious or ominous nature of certain raptors, could suggest a wider cultural engagement with these creatures beyond just the rarefied world of the court. The precise socio-economic diffusion of practical falconry skills and bird ownership in medieval Persia, beyond the well-documented elite sphere, remains a challenging area of historical inquiry, largely due to the nature of the surviving textual and artistic sources, which tend to focus on the activities of the powerful and wealthy. We don't have many detailed diaries from medieval Persian peasant farmers describing their attempts to train a rescued kestrel to catch field mice. Unfortunately, the historical record often has a distinct upper-class bias. However, some scholars argue that just as hunting with dogs or traps was practiced across different social strata for both sport and sustenance, a simplified form of hawking, using locally caught less noble birds for catching common prey, might have been more prevalent than the grand courtly image suggests. The knowledge of how to handle and train birds of prey, once established in a region, could potentially diffuse downwards or exist in parallel, more rustic traditions alongside the highly refined courtly art. Consider also the role of nomadic or semi-nomadic groups within or on the peripheries of the Persian sphere of influence. These cultures often had deep, ancient traditions of interacting with and utilizing birds of prey for hunting, born out of the necessities of their lifestyle in often harsh environments. Their practices might have differed significantly from the formalized courtly falconry, focusing on different types of birds, perhaps even eagles, in some areas and larger, more utilitarian quarry, but they represented another stream of falconry knowledge and practice that existed alongside, and sometimes interacted with the elite traditions. So, while the image of the bejeweled Shah with his perfectly trained peregrine remains the dominant icon of medieval Persian falconry, it's worth remembering that the gentle art may have had humbler, more widespread expressions. The love for these magnificent birds, the thrill of the aerial hunt, and the satisfaction of a successful partnership might not have been entirely confined to the gilded cages of royal mews and the sprawling estates of the nobility. The sky, after all, was open to all, and the instinct to partner with its keenest hunters may have whispered to more than just kings and emirs. The full story of falconry's social reach in medieval Persia is likely a richer, more varied tapestry than our elite sources alone can reveal. You've explored the noble art of falconry in medieval Persia from many angles. Its ancient roots, the prized raptors, the patient training, the elaborate equipment, the thrill of the royal hunt, its reflection in art and poetry, the profound bond between bird and human, the written wisdom of the Baysnamas, and even its potential reach beyond the highest echelons of society. But underlying all of this, essential to the very existence of this demanding pursuit, was the meticulous, daily, and often deeply knowledgeable in a care lavished upon these feathered athletes. A hunting bird was not just a tool to be taken out for a chase and then forgotten. It was a valuable, living creature requiring constant attention to its housing, diet, hygiene, and health. You are now invited to step into the relative quiet and order of the medieval Persian mews, the specialized quarters where these kings of the air were housed and cared for with a diligence befitting their noble status and crucial role. The mews kanayibaz, or similar terms in Persian, referring to the house or place of the falcons hawks, was far more than just a simple birdcage. For a wealthy nobleman or a royal court, it would have been a dedicated, well-constructed building, or a series of them, designed specifically to meet the needs of different types of raptors. Imagine a long, airy structure, perhaps with high ceilings to allow for some movement, and carefully designed ventilation to keep the air fresh and prevent diseases. The floors might be covered with clean sand or gravel, regularly changed to maintain hygiene. A key historical fact, emphasized in falconry treatises, was the importance of cleanliness in the mews to prevent avian ailments. This wasn't just a rustic barn, it was a carefully managed avian residence, a sort of five-star hotel for very demanding, very sharp-taloned guests. Make sure you sweep out Shah's perch area twice today, Hassan. The head falconer might instruct an assistant. His Highness was complaining yesterday that his royal talons detected a speck of unapproved dust. and we wouldn't want to upset a bird that cost more than your entire village. Now would we? Within the mews, each bird would have its own designated perch, Naishmun. These weren't just simple sticks. They were often carefully designed to be comfortable for the bird's feet and to prevent feather damage. There were different types of perches: screen perches, a padded bar between two uprights, allowing the bird to perch without its tail feathers touching a wall. Bow perches, a curved piece of wood or metal set in the ground, often used for hawks in a weathering yard, and block perches, a solid block of wood, sometimes with a padded top, typically for falcons. Each bird would be tethered to its perch by its jesses and leash, with a swivel to prevent tangling. The daily routine in the mews would begin early. The falconers and their assistants would attend to the birds, checking their condition, cleaning their perches and the surrounding area, and providing fresh water for drinking and bathing. Many raptors enjoy a good splash. The birds' mutes droppings would be inspected daily, as their color and consistency could provide important clues about the bird's health. It's like being a very specialized avian detective, where the primary clues are, well, let's just say not for the squeamish, but vital for preventative health care. Feeding time was, of course, a crucial part of the daily regimen. Hunting raptors have very specific dietary needs, requiring fresh, raw meat. The quality of the food was paramount. A well-managed mews would have a reliable supply of appropriate food items, now perhaps pigeons, quail, chicken, or small cuts of lean red meat. The meat would be carefully prepared, often with feathers or fur still attached to provide casting material in digestible parts that the bird would later regurgitate as a pellet, a process that helps keep its digestive system clean. The amount of food given to each bird would be meticulously controlled, as we've seen, to maintain its ideal flying weight and keenness for the hunt. Overfeeding was a cardinal sin, leading to a lazy, unresponsive bird. The health of these valuable birds was a constant concern. Falconry treatises from medieval Persia, like those from other cultures, dedicate significant sections to avian diseases and their traditional remedies. Common ailments might include respiratory problems, sometimes called the croaks, or the pantas, digestive upsets, foot infections like bumblefoot, often caused by improper perching surfaces or injury, feather mites or other parasites, and injuries sustained during the hunt, like broken bones or talon wounds. The falconer often had to act as a veterinarian, relying on a body of traditional knowledge, herbal remedies, and sometimes surprisingly sophisticated for the era interventions. A quirky and rather resourceful tidbit is the practice of imping, repairing a broken flight or tail feather by carefully grafting a section of a new, molted feather onto the stump of the old one, using a tiny needle or pin and adhesive. This highly skilled procedure could restore a bird's flying ability much faster than waiting for it to molt and regrow the feather naturally. It's like precision avian microsurgery, but with feathers and probably a lot of squinting. The remedies described in the Basnamas were often based on herbal concoctions, specific dietary adjustments, or the application of salves and powders. The efficacy of many traditional avian remedies described in falconry treatises is difficult to assess from a modern veterinary perspective. Though some may have had empirical benefits derived from centuries of observation, while others were likely based more on humoral theory or even superstition. For example, a bird with a respiratory ailment might be given a fumigation with aromatic herbs, or fed a specific type of meat believed to have warming or clearing properties. Beyond the indoor mews, there would often be a weathering yard, havakana, an enclosed outdoor area where the birds could be placed on their perches in good weather to enjoy fresh air and sunshine, and perhaps to bathe in shallow water pans. This was important for their general health and feather condition. The daily care also involved checking and maintaining the falconry equipment, ensuring jesses were soft and strong, hoods fitted correctly, leashes were not frayed, and, of course, there was the constant patient handling and interaction that reinforced the bond between falconer and bird, even on non-hunting days. Talking to the bird, stroking its breast, carrying it on the fist, these were all part of maintaining that delicate trust and responsiveness. The life of a prized hunting bird in a medieval Persian muse was, in many ways, one of pampered, if strictly controlled, privilege. They were valuable assets, symbols of power, and often objects of genuine affection and admiration from their keepers. Their daily care was a testament to the depth of knowledge, the meticulous attention to detail, and the profound respect that characterized the gentle art of falconry in this remarkable culture. The health and well-being of these kings of the air was paramount, for only a perfectly conditioned bird could truly master the Persian skies. You've been deeply immersed in the timeless traditions of medieval Persian falconry, from the meticulous training of the noble birds to their care in the royal mews and their breathtaking performances in the field. It might be easy to imagine this gentle art as something static, an unchanging ritual passed down perfectly preserved through the centuries. But like any living tradition, Persian Bazdar was not frozen in amber. As empires rose and fell, as new cultures interacted, as technologies evolved, and as the varied landscape of Persia itself subtly changed, so too did the practices, preferences, and even the perceived purpose of falconry. The winds of history were constantly shifting, and this ancient art, for all its deep roots, had to adapt and evolve to endure. Consider the long sweep of medieval Persian history, from the Arab conquest of the 7th century that brought an end to the Sasanian Empire, through the rise of various Iranian and Turkic dynasties like the Samanids, Ghaznavids, and Seljuks. Then the cataclysmic Mongol invasions of the 13th century, followed by the Timurid Renaissance, and eventually leading to the powerful Safavid Empire from the 16th century onwards. Each of these periods brought new rulers, new cultural influences, and sometimes new approaches to courtly life and noble pastimes, including falconry. A key historical fact is that many of these new ruling elites, whether Arab, Turkic, or Mongol, often came from cultures that already had their own strong traditions of horsemanship and hunting, including, in many cases, falconry. So, rather than suppressing the existing Persian art, they often embraced it, adopted it, and sometimes blended it with their own ancestral practices, leading to a rich, ongoing synthesis. It's like a very old, very distinguished family recipe that each new generation of chefs tweaks slightly, adding a new spice here, a different technique there, keeping it alive by keeping it relevant. The new Mongol Khan has taken a particular fancy to hunting with golden eagles for wolves, a rather robust steppe tradition. A Persian court falconer might observe, "We may need to expand the mews and perhaps invest in some significantly larger, more reinforced hawking gloves, and maybe some chainmail for the beaters." The types of birds favored, or the specific quarry pursued, might shift with these changing cultural influences. For instance, the Seljuk Turks, who came to dominate much of Persia from the 11th century, were renowned for their cavalry skills and their own deep traditions of hunting with birds of prey, possibly bringing with them new techniques or preferences for certain types of Central Asian raptors. The exact impact of the Mongol invasions on Persian falconry traditions, whether it was initially disruptive due to the widespread devastation, or ultimately led to a new synthesis of Turco-Mongol and Persian techniques, particularly in areas like large game hawking with eagles, is still analyzed by historians of the period. Another significant factor that would, over the very long term, begin to subtly alter the landscape of hunting was the gradual introduction and increasing effectiveness of firearms. While firearms didn't become truly dominant for hunting until much later than our medieval Persia focus, the very earliest, most rudimentary hand cannons and arquebuses began to appear in Persia by the late 14th or 15th centuries, often via the Ottomans or other intermediaries. As these weapons became more reliable and accurate over subsequent centuries, they would eventually offer a more efficient, if perhaps less sporting or noble, means of procuring game than the painstaking art of falconry. This didn't mean falconry disappeared overnight, far from it. Its cultural prestige, its deep association with royalty and nobility, and the sheer thrill of the aerial chase ensured its survival as a beloved elite sport. but its role as a primary means of obtaining food for the table might have slowly diminished in importance for some, allowing it to become even more focused on its ritualistic, symbolic, and purely sporting aspects. It's a bit like the transition from cavalry to tanks in warfare. The horse didn't immediately vanish from the battlefield, but its primary role shifted. Changes in land use and the environment could also have had an impact. As populations grew, as agriculture expanded, as forests were cleared for fuel or timber, remember our discussion on environmental pressures in other contexts. The habitats for certain types of quarry might have shrunk or shifted. This could necessitate changes in hunting grounds, in the types of birds used, or in the very frequency and scale of royal hunts. A successful falconer needed to be not just a good bird trainer, but also a keen observer of the natural world, adaptable to its subtle and not so subtle changes. The written tradition of the Baznamas, those invaluable falconry treatises, also reflects this evolution. Later treatises might incorporate new knowledge, refine older techniques, describe newly favored species of raptors, or even debate the merits of different training methods. They show a living tradition, one that was being constantly discussed, analyzed, and updated by its practitioners, even as it revered its ancient roots. A quirky, and perhaps amusing, tidbit might be to imagine a heated debate in a later Persian falconry manual about the old school versus new school. Methods of, say, hooding a particularly temperamental gerfalcon, with one master advocating for the time-honored technique of infinite patience and whispered Sufi poetry, and another arguing for a more efficient, if slightly less poetic approach, involving a small piece of very tasty dried apricot as a distraction. Despite all these shifting winds of political change, technological innovation, and environmental pressures, the core elements of Persian falconry, the deep bond with the bird, the thrill of the hunt, its status as a noble art, demonstrated remarkable resilience and continuity. It was too deeply woven into the cultural fabric, too closely associated with the ideals of Persian kingship and aristocracy, to be easily discarded. It adapted, it evolved, but it endured, a testament to its profound appeal and its deep historical roots. So, as you reflect on the centuries of falconry in medieval Persia, you see not a static, unchanging picture, but a dynamic tradition, constantly responding to new influences, new challenges, and new opportunities, yet always retaining its essential spirit, that gentle art of partnership between human and bird, soaring together under the ever-changing, yet eternally vast, Persian skies. The traditions evolved, but the silhouette of the falcon on the gloved fist remained a potent symbol of a timeless pursuit. The winds of change have swept across the Persian landscape. Dynasties have risen and fallen, new technologies have emerged, yet the silhouette of the falcon on the gloved fist, that potent symbol of the gentle art of Basder Aykükte, has endured with remarkable tenacity. As our journey through the world of medieval Persian falconry draws to its close, you are left to contemplate the profound and lasting legacy of this ancient pursuit. It's a legacy woven not just into the historical fabric of Persia itself, but one whose threads have reached out across cultures and centuries, leaving an indelible mark on the global story of human-animal partnership, sport, art, and the very language we use to describe nobility and keen vision. The winged art of the Persian skies has left an echo that still resonates today. The most immediate and profound legacy of Persian falconry lies, of course, within Persian culture itself. For centuries, as we have seen, it was far more than just a method of hunting. It was an integral part of royal identity, a defining characteristic of nobility, a rich source of inspiration for poets and artists, and a sophisticated body of knowledge codified in learned treatises. The image of the Shah or the Emir as a skilled falconer, a master of both his kingdom and these magnificent birds of prey, became a powerful archetype. This association with royalty and high status imbued falconry with an aura of prestige that persisted for generations. even as the practical necessity of falconry for obtaining food diminished with changing agricultural practices and hunting technologies. Its cultural significance as a symbol of heritage, skill, and a connection to a noble past remained incredibly strong. It's like that old family heirloom that might not be strictly useful anymore in a modern sense. Say, your great aunt's collection of antique silver thimbles, but it carries immense sentimental and historical value, a tangible link to who you are and where you came from. For Persia, falconry was one such thimble, albeit a rather more exciting and occasionally bitey one. But the influence of Persian falconry was not confined to Persia's borders. A key historical fact is that Persian expertise in Bezdar was renowned throughout the medieval world, and it significantly influenced the development and practice of falconry in neighboring cultures and even further afield. The Arab caliphates, which conquered Persia in the 7th century, greatly admired and adopted Persian courtly traditions, including their sophisticated falconry practices. Many of the Arabic terms related to falconry, and much of the knowledge contained in early Arabic treatises on the subject, show clear Persian origins or influences. The Sasanian Persian court, even before the Islamic conquest, had already established a very high standard, and this was largely inherited and continued. This influence also spread westward towards Europe. While falconry was known in parts of Europe from Roman times, perhaps itself an earlier diffusion from the East, it experienced a major flourishing during the medieval period, particularly from the time of the Crusades onwards. European crusaders and travelers encountering the highly developed falconry traditions in the Byzantine Empire, which had its own rich heritage, also influenced by the East and in the Islamic lands of the Near East, were undoubtedly impressed. The exact pathways and mechanisms by which specific Persian or Middle Eastern falconry techniques, terminology, and even types of birds influenced European practices are still traced and debated by historians of sport and culture. But the connections are undeniable. For instance, certain types of hoods, lures, or training methods may have found their way into European falconry through this cultural exchange. It's a reminder that the Silk Road wasn't just about goods. It was about the transmission of complex skills and cultural passions. By St. George, a returning Crusader knight might have exclaimed, "Forget the Saracen gold. Look at the way their emirs handle these magnificent soccer falcons. We simply must get some of these back in Normandy." Though training them not to attack the Archbishop's prize-winning pigeons might be a challenge. The legacy is also visible in language. Many terms used in international falconry even today have Persian or Arabic roots, a linguistic testament to the historical preeminence of these cultures in the art. The very word falcon itself, while coming through Latin and French, is part of a wide family of bird names with ancient Indo-European roots that were well understood in Persia. In the modern era, while falconry is no longer a widespread necessity for obtaining food, it has survived as a cherished traditional sport and a recognized cultural heritage in many parts of the world, including regions with strong historical ties to Persian traditions. A quirky and rather wonderful modern legacy is that falconry, as a living human heritage, was inscribed by UNESCO on its representative list of the intangible cultural heritage of humanity in 2010, and subsequently extended with numerous countries, including many in the Middle East and Central Asia. Participating in this recognition, this highlights a global acknowledgement of its historical importance and its value as a traditional skill that fosters a deep connection with nature and with these magnificent birds. What does the enduring appeal of this ancient art tell us? Perhaps it speaks to a fundamental human fascination with the wild, and a desire to form a unique, cooperative bond with a creature of such fierce independence and grace. The falconer does not truly tame the bird in the sense of breaking its spirit. Rather, they learn to understand its nature, to work with its instincts, and to earn its conditional trust and cooperation. It's a relationship built on respect, patience, and an incredibly deep level of observation and empathy. It teaches us about the delicate balance between control and freedom, between human skill and natural prowess. The gentle art of falconry in medieval Persia Therefore, it leaves us with more than just beautiful images of nobles with birds on their fists. It leaves us with a legacy of profound ecological understanding, however intuitive, of sophisticated training techniques, of rich artistic and literary inspiration, and of a unique interspecies partnership that captured the imagination of a civilization for centuries. The winged hunters may no longer dominate the practicalities of the hunt as they once did, but their flight continues to symbolize a timeless human aspiration to connect with the wild, to master a challenging art, and perhaps, just for a moment, to feel the exhilarating freedom of soaring through the vast, open skies, vicariously on the wings of a noble bird. The echoes from those Persian mews and hunting grounds still whisper of this enduring aerial art. And so, as the last imaginary falcon returns to the gloved fist, its feathers ruffled by the desert wind, our journey through the gentle art of falconry in medieval Persia draws to its peaceful close. We have soared through skies of deep historical significance, witnessed the intricate dance between human and bird, and felt the profound cultural resonance of this noble pursuit. From the patient taming of wild raptors to their breathtaking prowess in the hunt, from their revered place in royal courts to their immortalization in poetry and art, the story of Persian Bazdar is one of skill, patience, and a unique, almost spiritual connection with the natural world. As these images of sleek falcons, ornate hoods, and vast sunlit plains begin to soften and meld with the quiet of your surroundings, may you carry with you a sense of the beauty and dedication inherent in this ancient craft. Let the thrill of the chase give way to a deep calm, and may your dreams be as clear and far-seeing as a falcon's gaze, soaring peacefully through the untroubled skies of your own restful night. Sweet dreams,